Hello, church, and welcome to another edition of our daily devotions while we are apart and separated from one another, trying to stay connected virtually. Well, you notice I'm outside today. I just had to get out of the house, right? Don't worry, lots of social distance between me and the camera person. And as we were thinking about this week, the topic of endurance of our faith, how do you endure through tough or difficult or challenging, unforeseen times? I thought, what better person to start a week on endurance than Job? If you read back in the Old Testament, the book of Job, Job is, first of all, his name means hated or persecuted, tested. So you wonder, is he a real person? Did his parents really name him that? Or is this wisdom book really an analogy about God in the why moments? Why do these things happen to good people or to righteous people? Not when, why? But instead of focusing on the why question as much, I want to focus on where is God in this? And so in the very first chapter of the book of Job, you see Satan coming to the courts of heaven and God saying, hey, have you considered my servant Job? What a righteous and upstanding man he is. And Satan says back to God, yeah, but let me mess with him, mess up his hair a little bit. Let me give him some boils. Let me add him, let me test him. And, people come and steal his camels and his sheep and his donkeys. And then another messenger comes, one after another. These bad news bears kind of coming to him and saying, now, your eldest son had all your daughters and sons, all 10 of them in one place, and the roof collapsed, they're all dead. Now, where's your faith, Job? And through it all, God says, you know what? I believe in Job's faith. And Satan, and in his testing, says, no, he will fold like a house of cards. He'll renounce you. He'll pretend he has no God at all when the going gets tough. And the thing that stood out to me more than anything in the book of Job recently is that God believes in us, believes in our ability to hold and endure even through tough moments. And even in moments when we're frustrated, as Job is, when our friends get us down and discouraged by their assessment of things, when our wives tell us, Job, why don't you just curse God and die? There's a spousal support, or our husbands. And Job doesn't buckle under any of those things. He gets angry. He gets frustrated. He gets down. He even challenges God and says, why don't you come down here and tell me why all these things are happening? And in the end, God shows up in the whirlwind. And there is no answer to the why. It's just basically, in a nutshell, Job, there's some things that a human brain can't fully understand, even if I were to tell you. Just know that I'm God and you're not, and stay the course. And Job does. But it's that believing in humanity that I really kind of lifts my spirits at times when I'm often down, that God believes in me and in you in times that we endure. And I remember when I was in seminary, I've shared the story with a few of you, when I decided to go to seminary and I was in preaching classes. And something that you may not know about me is that I was terrified to speak in public. Not because I was really afraid of getting up in front of people, although there was that. It's a second fear behind moving and dying for almost every person. But it was more that I thought, who am I to speak about God to people? I'm very flawed. I know who I am, and I know the things I've messed up in my life, the people I've hurt in my life, regrets I carry. God can certainly find somebody better, right, to talk to people about God. And so we had our first practice sermon in seminary in this preaching lab, this little mini chapel. And I got about 3 or 4 minutes into it, and I shook my head and said, this isn't for me. I can't do this. And I walked out. My fellow classmates said, what's going on? Has Oberle lost his mind? He's not going to pass the course. And what kind of pastor is he going to be if he can't preach? And I remember Reverend Bill Turner, an old AME pastor, he came to me and in the middle of a lecture of about 40 other students, and he stopped right there at my desk and looked down at me, and I said, I understand we had a problem in the preaching lab. I understand you you quit, you gave up, you walked out, you said this isn't for you, God can't use you in this way. I said, yeah, I'm struggling. He said, well, did God give you something to say? Yeah. Did you study the scripture? Yeah. Did you pray on it? Do you feel like God said, I need you to say this? I said, yeah. He said, well, then why are you worried? It's not about you, it's about God. God's awfully big. Doesn't matter how small you might think you are. Let God use you. If God's giving you something to say it. What a great joy. Don't live in fear, but live in the joy of the good news. And he helped me look at that situation in the positive light of God working through it instead of the negative. I'm hoping that during this pandemic, instead of looking at the fear or starting the day in frustration and anger, you might look at the way, how is God working and moving in my life in this moment? And how am I open to being a vessel of good news in it? May God's peace and strength and endurance like Job be with you. Amen.